All right, another loss, but if you're where I'm at, that was what I call a win-loss. Matter of fact, if you look at everything that happened in the noon slot, you couldn't have laid this out more perfect than what actually went down. If the draft were today, the Texans would have the first pick. Carolina won this week, so they now have 3 wins. The Lions won, so they're all the way up to 10, and Pittsburgh won. So you're in really, really good shape right now when it comes to the Tankathon rankings. That's really the most significant thing right now. And if the Raiders can do you a favor, then you get even more ground there. That's really all that matters. We'll get into the game itself and what to make of that. The thing about these games now is it's really kind of more of the same. Like outside of Nico Collins progressing and, some of these rookies playing okay, which by the way, I don't even know how to judge Derek Stingley anymore because this defense is such to where he's basically in zone the whole time. And they're just playing they're playing not to lose. That's what the defense is. He did have a nice open field tackle on Barkley. I thought he was fine. Jalen Petrie, this is probably his worst game as a pro. I would say Dameon Pierce started out slow, showed some things, had the fumble, but he's just gassed. He's basically on an island by himself. So I don't even like it. The Texans are the only team in the NFL without 2 capable running backs, which it's actually kind of hard to do. It's actually kind of impressive that they've been able to do that. But that's just where I'm at. I bring on Cody Stutes now. Stutes, what's your biggest takeaway from today outside of my biggest takeaway, which is it was actually a pretty successful day when it comes to teams doing you favors and you not getting in the way of the ultimate dream, which for me is to have the number 1 pick.
Yeah, it was a fantastic day from trying to get the number 1 pick standpoint. It's a horrible day for the coaches that Nick Caserio's hired and the coaches that Nick Caserio has allowed this staff to hire. This is a really poorly coached team. They're really bad on defense on some of the basics. The offense is super uninspiring the majority of the game. It's not a very well-coached football team. And you would hope that within a season where you're headed towards the number 1 overall pick, you have some hope that these players will improve. These players will turn into really nice players and they'll get better over the course of the season. But Kenyon Green's gotten worse. Jalen Petrie's gotten worse. Derek Stingley's basically not used at all. I mean, this is one of the wackest wide receiver groups in the entire National Football League. And Lovie Smith's afraid to man these guys up. Lovie Smith's afraid to put Steven Nelson and Derek Stingley out there and man up Darius Slayton and Kenny Golladay and the guys that are out there. Like, you don't want to man this wide receiver group up. I understand that you don't want to man up Denver when you were set to play Denver, even though they did at time to time. I understand not wanting to man up some of the teams on your schedule. But this team, this is the type of team you need to man up with your corners. You need to go man defense and try to make them through the air beat Derek Stingley. Try to make them through the air beat Steven Nelson, beat Desmond King, beat Tavier Thomas, beat Christian Harris covering a tight end. But now Lovie's giving them that same old, cover 2. I mean, the Texans play the 5th most cover 2 in all of football heading into this week. Like it's a really,
which is crazy when you look at what they've invested in the corners. I mean, you used the number 3 overall pick on Stingley and you brought in Nelson, and it's not like those guys have been bad. I actually think they've been pretty good. And, the thing that bothers me about Lovie Smith, and this is why I've kind of changed my tone on him, is he's got a little bit of blowhard in him, and a little bit more than I anticipated. But, he gets so offended when you ask about, schematic fit and, are some of these corners more, schematic fits than others. And you watch the way that he plays Derek Stingley, and it's very clear that the reservations that people had were validated. And my thing is this, like, in the short term, it might be a good thing to have, a coaching staff that's not going to be able to coach this team up to 6-7 wins in the short term. But in the long term, I've gone from having doubts, like, reasonable doubts that this coaching staff can't coach guys to their full potential, like when the roster's ready to go, to like, I would be shocked. I would bet almost my entire life on this coaching staff not being able to coach up teams from offense to defense. Outside of special teams, this is a bad coaching staff. And I'll take it a step further. I think if you switch the rosters today, and I know the Giants have better players, I know Saquon's better, I know Dexter Lawrence is better. I believe that if Brian Dable coached the Texans and Lovie Smith and Pep Hamilton coached the Giants, and you let Brian Dable bring his staff over here, I think that Brian Dable wins.
They'd have blown him out.
I truly believe that.
They'd have blown him out. Brian Dable and that Giants coaching staff with the Texans team against this Vikings team led by Lovie Smith, they'd have blown him out. It's a bad coaching staff. I talked to you about this in the preseason. I had this conversation with you in the preseason. We've talked about this as something I've been harping on a lot with this staff. There's a lot of losers on this staff. And I don't mean that in that I think those guys are bad guys. I think they're bad at football and they're losers that way. There's a lot of coaches on this staff that haven't coached winning football in the past couple of years. Look at where a lot of these guys come from. It's not been from winning situations. It's not been from big-time success. You have the offensive line coach from the Jacksonville Jaguars. They were awful last year. They picked number 1 in the entire NFL draft.
You see the headline? You see the line?
Yeah. I mean, that I am seriously worried about how this coaching staff is built. You look at where all these guys have coached, there's not been a lot of winning in their past. And I just don't know if everybody knows how to win and how to coach guys up to win on this team. And again, the loss is good. Like you talked about the draft order. I tweeted it out. The Texans, if the draft was tomorrow, would have the number 1 and the number 7th overall pick. Like, that's great. They have a cushion between them and everybody except for the Raiders, okay? And the Raiders
might help.
The Raiders might help, okay? So they have a cushion, which means the Texans fans can get that Browns victory that they want, okay? If the Texans only win one more game this year, I want them to beat the Browns, and then that's it. Two wins. The rest are losses. You have the tie, and then bing, bang, boom, you pick number 1. You get yourself a quarterback. But the coaching staff, you talked about it, Pep Hamilton can't coach the quarterback next year. There's some guys in this league that can't be head coaches. Josh McDaniels looks like one of those guys. Genius offensive coordinator. Incredible offensive mind. Seemingly not cut out to be a head coach. Pep Hamilton is seemingly not cut out to be an offensive coordinator. He might just need to be a position coach. He might just need to be a passing game coordinator. Pep Hamilton's not cut out to be an offensive coordinator in the National Football League. And he cannot coach the number 1 overall pick at quarterback next year. I cannot have that guy coaching the team. Unless something drastically changes over the next few weeks, it would be a detriment to the future of this organization if Pep Hamilton was the coach of the number 1 overall pick next year.
Here's the thing. Maybe he's a good quarterback coach. There's context there, but it's really not like a mystery why he went over a half decade without being an offensive coordinator in the NFL, despite being in the NFL. Like it's kind of obvious. I mean, you had the run up the middle with Rex Burkhead on 3rd and 5. You had the tunnel screen on 3rd and 10. They're not very organized. What the hell was that at the end? Like, I don't mind kicking the field goal early, but they almost acted like they got like a free play from the 20 with 12 seconds left or something. Like they didn't need to worry about time. That was weird. Lovie Smith also, you had Lovie Smith, for whatever reason, at the end of the second quarter, he lets 20 extra seconds go off the clock and then calls a timeout to get the ball back. It's just it's a whack coaching staff when it comes to if you want to get the most out of your players. Now, for the situation we're in, maybe it's okay. But yeah, Pep Hamilton, offensive coordinator, no thank you. Lovie Smith's defense, no thank you. It just can't happen at this point. And at no point have we said, and that's the one thing that I think is really clear. Like there's overreactions and there's times where, you say something and then the fluid situation in sports is such that once you get proven wrong, then what's true today wasn't true yesterday. At no point, at least in my assessment of Lovie Smith, did I ever say this guy's a great coach because of this. I said he's the right guy for the job because A, he's better than David Culley. B, we're in the process over results. And he's kind of an adult in the room. I never said I'm really looking forward to seeing Lovie Smith call a defense. As a matter of fact, when they hired him as a defensive coordinator, there was about 6 years of proof that he hadn't called a successful defense in a long, long time. So this shouldn't be like a shocking revelation, but it's even worse than I thought it would be. I'll be honest. It's even worse than I thought it would be on all ends. And I'm focusing on offense and defense.
Wait, I have a quick question for you. I'm sorry. The Vikings went to overtime? I thought they won.
What do you
mean? The Vikings and Bills went to overtime? The Bills somehow turned that into an overtime situation? That's a coaching staff. You were talking about coaching. That's a coaching staff. You fumble the game away, and then all of a sudden you send it to overtime?
Wait,
Holy
what?
crap. That game's
they
in
went to the
overtime.
Cowboys. They went to the Cowboys here. We just saw that. Me
They
and my girl
pulled a
were just
Heidi?
watching. Huh?
They pulled a Heidi? Do you know what that means?
No.
Oh, Lopez will explain it to you tomorrow, I'm sure. Heidi, there's a famous game from many years ago where they cut the game off to go to a TV showing of the movie Heidi. And so they went to the Cows when it was supposed to be overtime?
Yeah, me and my girl were watching, and we just thought Vikings won. Buffalo somehow sent it to overtime. So,
oh wow, yeah. Going back to the Texans conversation. Sorry, I didn't mean to get us off on a tangent here. There's so many signs that, yes, you're going to add a lot of talent. Like you're going to have a tremendous amount of money. You're going to have a lot of draft picks. You're going to add talent to this team. There's so many signs that a better coached football team would be in a different spot than where the Texans are right now. Not only would Davis Mills maybe be better, not only would a player here or a player there be better, the play calling, things of that nature, but just the overall minimization of the margins that you have to live in as a poorly coached and really untalented football team. Like you would minimize so much of that if you had better coaching, but you live in the margins, and everything went against the Texans today, from turnovers to rookie offensive lineman gets a holding call, and the disgruntled wide receiver doesn't have a touchdown catch now. Like,
how many people were happy Brandon Cook's touchdown got called back?
I was not happy to see the interception on the very next play, but I was happy that Brandon Cooks didn't get to score that touchdown. He looked invested in the huddle. He looked like he was paying attention. He didn't look like a guy that was there to lollygag it, but that may change with a bunch more losses stacking up.
What about Nico Collins being back? That's a good thing. Brevin Jordan, we got to think that Brevin Jordan is going to struggle to make this team next year.
Sure. He should. You should have enough bodies, and you should be finding enough people to push him down the roster. You should not be guaranteed a roster spot on the Texans just because you were a fifth-round pick a couple of years ago. They should be constantly pushing guys. And oh, by the way, he just hasn't been very good. You can't be a healthy. You can't be a healthy scratch on a bad football team. You're a healthy scratch on a good football team, it's more understandable. It's hard to be a healthy scratch on a bad football team.
Yeah, with tight end issues, and you're getting scratched for a guy who just played his first game last week.
What was O.J. Howard doing on that Akins screen?
Not blocking.
Was he afraid he was going to get a penalty for blocking? He just watched the defender chase Jordan Akins down he was running with the defender, running with Akins step for step. He just watched the defender chase Jordan Akins down the whole way down the field. Like, what are you doing? Go throw a block.
Let's go through some of the comments. Our clock management is enough to make Pop Warner coaches laugh. Texans don't practice situational football. Yeah, you had the 20 seconds off the clock at the end of the second quarter. The end of the game, a decent concept. But a decent concept without proper execution, it'll make you look dumb, which is what happened to them. Wouldn't have mattered. Glad they lost. Yes, most people are. That'd be an amazing one. The DC sucks. More on Lovie and the DC. Help us out, Cleveland Browns. Yeah, they will. What do you think about Pierce and the use? It's becoming a legit concern for me because I just think he's having to do a little bit too much. And it's frustrating because they don't even have like a running back they trust to give a carry here or there too. Like even Saquon, and Saquon's used to this. Like Saquon's used to having a significant workload. Like Saquon even has Matt Breida who can come in and help him out a little bit.
Well, thankfully they dialed back Pierce's usage today. 10 less carries. He had a couple more targets than he did the previous week, but he's checking in at much higher usage than certainly what he did at Florida. I'm not worried about him this year or a serious injury. Obviously, there's only one guy that's basically fought Father Time and won at the running back position that's doing it right now in the National Football League, and that's Derrick Henry, and Pierce ain't Derrick Henry. So I certainly understand the concern that Dameon Pierce's best years are going to be used on a bad football team. That's why you've got to find a simple solution for the second running back spot. Maybe that's a draft pick.
Pay attention to it.
Maybe
that's
very
easy.
Maybe it's a draft pick next year or a veteran. Really, it's really disappointing to have Daria Gumbawale and Rex Burkhead on this team because that should be a constant churn of guys who've never gotten opportunities in the National Football League to find somebody who is like it's you found sort of a Steve Slayton situation to use an example from the past of this franchise. Like mid-round pick, it's turned into a really nice player, better than people believed he was going to be. Saw something in college where like, oh my, he could do something, and it's translated even better than you could think at the NFL level. Now go find that Arian Foster type person, an undrafted free agent that can contribute. I'm not saying Arian Foster. I'm not saying Arian Foster.
Here we go. Let's get an undrafted guy.
But
draft someone in the second round or something like that. Make Dameon Pierce your second best running back.
I understand. I agree with you. I understand what you're saying. I'm talking about right now. I'm not talking about next offseason. I'm not talking about next year. I'm talking about right now. This team should not have two veterans who've played their best football behind them as the backup running backs. They should have two unproven guys who've never gotten a shot in the National Football League. That's poor roster management.
By the way, I see you kind of creeping over there. You thought Jefferson made a nice big play.
What? Are you talking?
You thought Jefferson made a nice play for the Vikings, didn't you?
I've already
we're in a fantasy battle right now. I have Jefferson, and that's why he doesn't want this overtime.
I've already resigned to the fact that I'm losing fantasy football.
No, I lost. Congrats. Congrats on your win. Good job.
I lost.
You win. The Kenyon Green situation. How worried are you about the Kenyon Green thing? I think Kenyon Green will be fine. I do think there are some good things, but I do think he's going to have to really, really take this next offseason serious. And it's like in regards to his body, a lot of times injuries happen. You can't handle, getting hurt sometimes, but he's going to whether it's diet, whether it's all that, he's going to have to really hit it hard this offseason.
Can we get him on the Tony Mandrich plan this offseason? Have him coming back just looking like a freaking monster? Just Kenyon Green just showing up looking like he spent a whole offseason with Arnold Schwarzenegger?
I think he's tired from carrying Jimbo's program all those years. Look what's happened since he left.
There's a solid, I don't know how you feel about this. I don't want to say outmaneuvered because I don't necessarily feel like I really wanted any of those guys that went ahead of them, from a move up to get them standpoint. But it definitely feels to me like in Nick Caserio's perfect world that the 13th overall pick was about to be a wide receiver. And then 4 went off the board in the 5 picks before them. And then they ended up, okay, we'll trade back a couple picks, pick up some 4th rounders, and then we'll just draft an offensive lineman.
Fortunately for him, this is a very good wide receiver class.
Yeah, and they're gonna maybe get Mechie back in the future. I also wonder too exactly who that trade was and what the ammunition was, because Casario's mentioned they had an opportunity to move back again from 15. I wonder what that was and who the target would have been, because it's not out of the question Kenyon Green would have been there at 20. And if he wasn't, could you have maybe taken Tyler Linderbaum, the center from Iowa, and still gotten your offensive lineman, but also had some additional ammunition? Linderbaum's been fantastic for the Ravens. I'm second guessing a player that's played pretty well for most. Of the year.
But everyone knew Linderbaum was going to be the truth. That's not like a shock.
Right. I just wonder if actions that occurred in the picks before them, combined with worried about guard versus center and where they would be and things of that nature, led to Kenyon Green. I don't like drafting guards in the first round. He's certainly way better than just about anybody they would have put at left guard, seemingly. Like, Kenyon Green is significantly better at football than Justin McCray. Like, I don't want to take that away from him. He's hit a rookie wall a little bit. Like, Kenyon Green's had some mistakes the past couple of weeks that he wasn't making early in the year. So I'm not out on Kenyon Green, and he might turn into he's the best left guard they've had since Wade Smith when Wade was going to the Pro Bowl. But
I don't know if that's saying much, but yeah.
Sure. But to come in as a rookie and be better than a bunch of different guys that played in the NFL for a few years, like, that's a good job by Kenyon Green. He's just got to get a lot better. You got to cut down on the penalties. He's just got to get a lot better. I mean, he had some really nice blocks today, sprung some big runs, but he just got to overall be more consistent and be better. And that's fine. I mean, you're supposed to hit the rookie wall. Like, I mean, you got to be really special to not have a rookie wall. And he hit the rookie wall as an offensive lineman. Okay, let's have a real offseason, transform the body.
Did he hit the wall, or is it like
he started to make far more mistakes than he was at the beginning?
I feel like he got off to a rough start.
I thought he's making more penalties. He's committing more penalties now than he did when he first got going.
LaD Reed says we need EB from KC. No, we don't. Like, I don't think so.
To do what?
I don't know. It's not. I think the best coach from Kansas City's offensive staff, in my opinion, is the one that was the offensive coordinator for the Giants today, and that's Kafka. I'm not on the EB thing. He's been fantastic. He and Dayball have been fantastic with Daniel Jones. Yeah, I mean they've done a good job. I mean it's competence. So I think Kansas City misses Kafka as much as anything. Did it even matter that Cooks played today? I guess. I mean, not trading Brandon Cooks is going to be something that they look back on in a very, very, very unfavorable manner, unless they're able to get the second round pick that I heard they were offered, and unless the salary relief is better than they thought it would be. And I just find that really hard to believe. How about actually attempt to play the run? I mean, I think they're attempting to. I think the front seven is a problem. Someone says Kenyon Green needs to get on the Josh Ennis workout plan. Is Josh Ennis in shape or something? Is there a Josh Ennis workout plan? Someone says Bryce Young is coming.
What's the saying? You're always good with these.
Which one?
For Bryce, what's the saying for Bryce?
It's a hard one to figure out, man. Bryce Young is a tough one. The tanking, like the suck for luck type of thing.
Yeah.
It's hard.
The Bryce is right.
What does that mean? That doesn't say suck.
You don't have to say suck. I mean, it was tank for Tua.
That made sense. That means be bad for Tua, suck for luck, lose for luck.
The Bryce is right.
The Bryce is right means nothing.
Like the Price is right. The Bryce is right.
Yeah, that means that doesn't say anything about losing games for Bryce.
The Bryce is the right pick. The Bryce is right.
That would be after the draft. Is that your guy though? Is that where they need to go, Bryce?
Hell yeah. Absolutely.
No questions asked.
That guy's been a shining star on one of the less talented recent Alabama teams in recent memory.
He's on an island, man. Bringing back B.O.B. was a problem.
I mean, the mobility within the pocket, the ability to extend plays, the calmness with which he plays, the consistent calmness from like a game to game setup. Bryce Young is fantastic.
Yeah, he does everything right. And if people are focusing on his size, and it's just really dumb because it's and right on cue, someone's saying it's really, really stupid. Like it's actually kind of hilarious that people are doing that. I mean, the guy had a scholarship offer in middle school. You watch the guy play. The guy keeps his head down the field. He doesn't get a lot of passes batted down. He rolls out. He keeps his eyes up. He has all the vision. Like there's nothing about him, unless you just think he's just going to get crushed, and he's actually good at avoiding hits. Like it's actually really, really, really silly that people are talking about his size. It's actually really silly. Like the SEC, like the SEC is like that much different from as far as having to be size. Like nothing about him. He doesn't play small in any way, shape, or form at all. It's actually pretty hilarious that people are still doing that. And I think once like the quarterback evaluators get in and stuff, I don't think they'll be too concerned about his size either. He's gonna be fine.
I think he'll be great.
He's gonna be just fine. Just fine. And he's running kind of a pro style offense ish, with a little bit of mix. But if you put him with the right guy, I think it's gonna be even more costly or more dangerous because he's with O'Brien, but they're basically just rolling the ball out there and saying, "Hey, go win games." And more times than not, he's winning it. I think it's absolutely hilarious that that's even a discussion.
I mean, you just look at the guys who are successful in the National Football League right now on a week in, week out basis. I'm not talking about a guy that pops for a week and then has like 3 bad weeks. The week in, week out successful guys in the NFL, the people who are the quarterbacks of the top teams. They have some mobility to their game. They're not mobile quarterbacks. They have some mobility to their game. They can escape plays. They can escape pressure. They can move away from pressure. They're smart about it. They can use their legs as a weapon if they have to. They don't need to. Like even the evolution of Jalen Hurts, he's gone away from that read run that he was at different times in his football career. The guy can sit there, read a defense, make it to his 3rd, 4th read. If he has to run, he can run the football. Guys that are successful in the NFL right now have pocket mobility and the ability to get out of the pocket and mobile, and Bryce is that type of guy. He's not a run-first guy. He's a run in an emergency and do it really well when he has to guy.
You seeing what's going on in Indianapolis right now?
Are they playing hard for Jeff Saturday because he started the veteran quarterback?
7-zip, Matt Ryan. Throwing dimes. Touchdown, Matt Ryan. Running touchdown.
Yep.
7-zip.
Yep. Look, I thought that going into this game, I mean, make fun of – look, we've watched organizations in this town get made fun of from outside the building plenty of times. People in the building typically believe a lot more than the people outside the building. And that's a really, really bad Raiders football team right now. It's one of the worst defenses in football. That offense is very, very sketchy. It lacks consistency. And you had to know that being the laughingstock of the NFL for 5 or 6 days was going to have these guys fired up to play. Almost every team has that bounce after you fire a coach. Almost every single team has that bounce. Carolina has had one. Actually, Carolina's had 2 since Matt Rule's been gone. The Colts might have this one this week. That bounce. They're going down. They're going down. They bounce a little bit. And look, long term, I think it's going to be a joke, but right now it's going to be successful. I mean, everybody's bought in, going to be fired up.
Someone's asking, do you think Saturday could outcoach Lovie?
I mean, I've watched. I haven't even watched it.
I don't even know how Saturday coaches.
I know he's 1 for 1 on challenges so far.
I know that.
People.
I know Indianapolis has better personnel to where. Uh,
13 days ago, 14 days ago, Jeff Saturday tweeted, Raiders look horrible. And now people are quote tweeting that right now while the Raiders are losing to Jeff Saturday's Colts. I love Twitter. I love Twitter.
Adam's talking about the O-line, says no QB will be successful with this O-line. I really don't think the O-line is awful. I think that there's interior stuff to be desired, but I don't think the tackles have been bad. I don't think Titus has been bad. I think Laramie's actually been really good. Damian Pierce is running well. I don't think Davis Mills does him favors. I don't think the O-line is like terrible. I think the quarterback play has been bad, and there's limitations on like the skill guys, but I don't think the O-line is like, this isn't like the 2017 or whatever offensive line.
Well, I'm not sitting here every week bashing my head into the wall because the offensive line sucks anymore, if that's what people are wondering.
Yeah, I think people are, I'm not picking on him. I just think that people are trained to think that it's the offensive line because there was a time when Deshaun just had to save all butts. Probably could upgrade at center, but quite honestly, he's a backup, and I think he's a good backup center. And the other thing that I do think needs to be taken into account, and I'm not making excuses for him, Jeffrey Simmons and Dexter Lawrence are badass players that are going to make most interior offensive linemen look really stupid, really stupid. Dexter Lawrence is one of the most underrated players in the NFL.
Yep. He's fantastic.
And Jeffrey Simmons is maybe, if it's not Derrick Henry, he's probably the best player in the AFC in the division. If one of the 20 best players in the NFL.
The Titans considering not paying him is wild to me. If he had free agency, I'd throw the bag at him.
Like Aaron Donald, Bunny?
Yeah, I would.
I mean, if you're going to have a bunch of rookies and stuff and you want to overpay, I would definitely overpay Jeffrey Simmons.
Hell yeah. Give him $20 million a year. Let's go. Let's ride.
You get that interior guy, man. It can cover up a lot. I was talking about Dexter Lawrence.
20 million. I mean, look, you can fix that defensive line in a heartbeat. You throw a bunch of money at Jeffrey Simmons, you spend that Browns pick on a pass rusher, and then all of a sudden it's a very fun conversation on the ability to redo that defensive line. And then you spend maybe a second, third round pick on a linebacker. Woo! You fix that thing real fast.
You see Tankathon right now. The Texans have the 1st and 7th pick.
First and 8th pick.
My Tankathon says 1st and 7th.
I'm looking at it right now.
Oh, there it is, 8th. Yeah, I had to refresh.
Yeah, I wonder if the result of Minnesota going final changed some tiebreakers maybe or something.
Yeah, it's 1 and 8. But if the Raiders win, then it would be maybe 1 and 7. Not sure.
One of those Clemson guys would be a lot of fun.
Carter.
Jalen Carter would be, well, if you get Jeffrey Simmons, you may avoid Carter, although Carter could do whatever he wants on the defensive line. That guy's a freak. Ooh, Jeffrey Simmons and Jalen Carter. It's a tantalizing situation. That just makes you football grunt. Putting those two next to each other on a defensive line.
I mean, I just want some beasts, man. But Jeffrey Simmons, why not? I mean, if you're going to have a quarterback on a rookie deal, why not?
Man, you got me looking up 2023 NFL free agents now.
Simmons still has some time, though, doesn't he?
I just know there was a conversation in Tennessee recently about
he's got a couple years
not being able to pay him.
Well, they were talking about like a soft holdout a soft holdout in training camp where he was kind of waiting for a contract. I think they just put it on hold. They'll pay him after the off season. because they're not going to let AJ Brown walk and him. I don't think Vrabel would have that. I think Vrabel's smart enough to know how much they need that guy. And that guy slid to them because he had the off-field thing. I think I don't know.
He slid because his leg blew up. Remember?
Well, he had a torn ACL, but he also had an off-field thing where
he punched a woman defending a woman.
His sister.
Yeah.
I think it was his sister, and I think his sister was just getting the crap beat out of her, to the point where I think Amy Adams Strong came out and defended. The point is that he fell to them. That's really the only point I'm making, that a top 5 talent fell to them, and had none of that happened, they wouldn't have even had the opportunity to get him.
Mm-hmm.
This is the type of stuff that happens, though, when you're covering a shitty football team. You start having Jeffrey Simmons EA Sports dream scenarios, and you start talking about drafting guys and quarterbacks' height and all that type of stuff, because outside of losing, what happens really doesn't matter. There's the actual field.
There's one thing occurring with this Texans team that is a big positive. It's slow, but it's occurring. Is the arrow is clearly pointed in the right direction for Nico Collins. I don't know what his ultimate end game is, but the arrow is clearly pointing in the right direction and staying pointing in that direction finally with Nico Collins. It's not the jump that some third year or second year mid-round pick wide receivers have. Like, so there's been some guys in the second and third round and fourth round that have been really, really good in their second year. Deontay Johnson, Terry McLaurin.
Of that, yeah, but a lot of that's the quarterback's fault, though.
Sure. But it's not that level. But the arrow being pointed in the correct direction is a huge development long-term for this team, because there's a very good chance, unless you go with a free agent, if you don't prioritize wide receiver in the draft, your wide receiver group may be Nico, Mechie, and TBD.
Yeah, that's kind of the thing about the whole Nico thing. Is it's good that Nico's arrow is pointing up, but it's also kind of it's like a different way of looking at, what exactly it means, because now you know that Cooks is going to be gone, and say what you want about Cooks, you assume that Cooks would be at least on the team for 2 years after this one. So you would have a pretty productive, I don't know, whatever you want to call him, whatever you think Brandon Cooks is, you would have him and Nico, and then whatever else they decided. But now that Cooks is gone, I don't think you look at Nico and say, well, that's our number one. No. You need to go get another receiver and figure it out. Whereas if you had Cooks and Nico, maybe you could say in the draft, all right, we can wait till, round 3 or round 2. But now if you're sitting there with Cleveland's pick, and let's say it's somewhere in the top 10, whether it's Johnston from TCU, whether it's Smith and Jigba from Ohio State, whether it's who knows who else, you probably need to consider getting that receiver. And hell, maybe just focus on offense there's plenty of stuff to go around. You're going to have all kinds of picks, but getting some star power on offense would be nice. And then you got 2 more ones the following year, because there's going to be there's plenty of needs to go around. And in the second round too, you're also going to be drafting at the top. If you're drafting at the top of round 1, you're going to be drafting at the top of round 2. And that's where some of these other receivers can fall to you too. Whether it's Mims out of OU, who actually is having kind of misleading year because the offense is not there. Mims out of OU is a really good player.
I like him a lot.
And there are some other guys that you could find. Pittman was a second-round pick for the Colts. A.J. Brown was a second-round pick. You've heard me say this a lot. There's a lot of second-round talent there.
There's going to be some really good – look, there's wide receivers every year now. That's just the way it works. That's the way college is played now. You get wide receivers every year now. You just got to find guys that fit what you're going to do. Plus you never know what Caserio is going to do with that other first round pick. He moved down last year, moving down and ending up with a Jordan Addison or a Jalen Hyatt from Tennessee. Wouldn't be too bad.
Yayo says get Marvin Harrison Jr. Here's the thing. And this is why it's good that they have 2 first-round picks, not just this upcoming draft, but the one after. I've had people like send out their like dream drafts. And yesterday someone said, get Bowers from Georgia. Can't. He's only a sophomore, as is Marvin Harrison Jr. So you can't, those guys aren't even draft eligible right now.
Marvin, I don't know who's in the conversation or who's potentially going to end up with the number 1 overall pick in the 2024 draft. I'll tell you this right now. Get ready for the draft conversation. There will be some people that will advocate for Marvin Harrison Jr. going 1-1 in 2024.
I mean, that's happened before. Last time I can actually remember it was the Jamarcus Russell, Calvin Johnson. When's the last time they talked about a receiver going 1? That was it for me. I can't remember another time.
It's been a long time since that one.
Yeah, it was like Megatron or Jamarcus, and they went Jamarcus.
Probably.
And the Lions were actually getting made fun of for taking Calvin Johnson just because they'd taken Charles Rogers and Roy Williams. So it was actually pretty hilarious because the one team that get made fun of for drafting one of the best receivers of our lifetime was getting made fun of just because they drafted so many wide receivers.
Yeah, it's there's some really good pass catching talent coming out.
What'd you make of Mills' 300-yard game?
He ended up with 300 yards, did he?
He did. Little mop up at the end, never hurt anybody.
Wow. Good for him.
300.
Good for him. That'll be a big selling point when he's trying to get a backup job somewhere.
Lovey's going to love it. He's going to get a backup job here. 22 of 37, 319 and a touch. 85.3 rating compared to this is how you know that you have misleading stats. He had an 85.3 rating. Daniel Jones had a 153.3. Although I will say Darius Slayton might have helped that out with Jalen Petre's non-tackling ass.
Petrie? You don't get that reference, do you?
Yeah, it's from Julius Caesar. Bruce.
Yeah, there you go. Good for you.
See.
Good for you.
I'm not that much of a freaking meathead. TJ Williams said, join late to see Marvin Harrison in chat. I want Young this year, then defense, and then next year, please get Harrison. Man,
hopefully they're not bad enough to get Marvin Harrison Jr. I want him to be better than that.
I could see them getting a receiver this year, a receiver next year, get running backs, just get whatever, pile it up. Don't even try to spread love. If you want to make yourself really good in an area, go ahead.
Is there a position or positions that you prefer to spend free agent money on versus draft?
Yeah,
I don't trust wide receivers in free agency. I would much rather draft.
So you don't want to get like the Christian, and plus you got to also realize that the Texans are going to have the Jags tax where you're going to have to pay a lot. Now, Christian Kirk's a good player, but like you're going to have to pay like borderline wide receiver 1 money for Christian Kirk. That's what you mean?
Yeah. Well, just like how many free agent wide receivers turn into really, really nice players. Like they really don't. And typically they're vastly overpaid and they only last for
at least not top tier, top overpay tier.
Yeah. Well, that's what the tough part is. The Texans need a 1. Like they need a 1. So you're not going to find a 1 in free agency. You have to draft that type of guy.
I think they need to overpay one of these tight ends. And I don't know like which one they like. I don't know if they like Schultz for the Cowboys. I don't know if they like Gesicki. But I think they need to overpay one of these tight ends and still draft a tight end because with all the rookie deals, they're going to have 11 new rookies or whatever. I just think they need to get like a solid tight end. And I would still maybe even consider drafting a tight end too, but they've got to do better there. They've got to do better.
You know who they need to draft?
Big dude.
Darnell Washington. Darnell Washington from Georgia, 6'7", 270. That's
how many tight ends do those dudes have?
It would not surprise me if they turn into like the go-to spot for tight ends because you see so much success there. So it wouldn't surprise me if Kirby all of a sudden pivots and ends up with like the best tight end recruits in the nation. Yeah, give me some Darnell Washington action, please.
Yeah, I don't know. I think Cal will weather the 1-year black coach media blowback or quietly promote internally. Man, if they made Pep Hamilton a head coach for this, like for what Pep Hamilton's done this year, if they made Pep Hamilton a head coach, man, that would make Jeff Saturday look like the most qualified candidate ever, quite honestly, with the way Pep's called offense this year. I don't know. That would be a pretty interesting decision. And I like Pep, but I don't think Pep could say with a straight face that this has been a good stint for him.
That would be pathetic.
Yeah, that would be a really, really interesting. Interesting.
Look,
call.
if I mean, the tough part about firing coaches after 1 year and back-to-back years, the tough part about it is you would need to have one of those unanimous no duh hires,
like San Francisco did when they went with Tom Sula, then Chip Kelly, then Kyle Shanahan.
And Shanahan's coming off coordinating a Super Bowl
and an MVP
team and an MVP quarterback in Matt Ryan. So you would have to have that coach. You couldn't screw around with this Josh McCown, Hines Ward, Lombardi's grandson bullshit. You'd have to have the dude.
Well, then who's your guy? Who are some of your names? Like if you had a list right now.
I mean, the tough part about that conversation is you don't know like who's going to make that run right now. Like I'm telling you, that you may have to literally be getting the offensive coordinator off of a Super Bowl team or a defensive coordinator off of a Super Bowl team. By the way, I want an offensive mind. I don't want a defensive mind.
About Kafka.
That'd be sweet. I'd be down for that. I would be down for that. The tough part is like Dayball gets a lot of credit. So it's and look, Kevin O'Connell has the Vikings with as many wins as they did last year already through 9 games. So he didn't call plays in LA for the Rams. McVay does. So it's not like you have to be the play caller. But yeah, Kafka in New York. Do you circle back around to Kellen Moore?
I don't know.
I mean, they gimmicked together 4 games worth of offense with a backup quarterback.
They did. Hey, speaking of Dalton Schultz with the catch right there, future Texan.
I mean, you can't I don't want Bieniemy.
I like Dan Quinn. Like if you're going to credit the Cowboys for gimmicking together, I think Dan Quinn.
What about who's the Eagles?
What if Dan Quinn? What if you draft Will Anderson number 1 and you have Dan Quinn using Will Anderson?
I'm not having that conversation. You draft the quarterback.
No, but what if you get Will Anderson and you got Dan Quinn? All right, what if you get Jalen Carter or Will Anderson? Let's say Cleveland has the 5th pick and Jalen Carter or Will Anderson fall to 5 and you get Bryce Young and then you get one of those guys and you get Dan Quinn. Because as good as Micah Parsons is, let's be honest, the way that Dan Quinn's used him, and you can make a case that maybe he's been forced to because Lawrence was out when they first got him. But let's be honest, he showed a lot of people that he could do what he did. But what if you had Dan Quinn working with one of those guys?
Well, that'd be pretty freaking great. Who would Dan Quinn hire as his offensive coordinator? Could he get Frank Reich?
Would you hire Frank Reich?
I'd hire Frank Reich to be my OC. I'd hire Frank Reich to be my OC.
D'Amico's the guy, though. Like D'Amico's the guy because D'Amico's perfect because D'Amico is A, he's a former Texan. B, he's really good at calling defense. C, he comes from the Kyle Shanahan pipeline, and they run an offensive scheme that is working with the Jets. It's working with the 49ers. It's working with the Vikings. It worked with the Rams. It's working everywhere. Like we can have all these conversations. D'Amico's the number 1. I just don't know if D'Amico would want this get. Although you give him the number 1 pick, D'Amico would come here.
Here, another thing too. The last 49ers defensive coordinator, they're in second place in the AFC East now. And he's turned a bunch of defenders that weren't any good into really good football players. Robert Saleh's done a fantastic job in New York.
Yeah, they haven't gotten good quarterback play. The thing about D'Amico is, like, everybody talks about backlash and everybody talks about stuff, and I don't think that should come into play because I don't think Nick Caserio, I don't think Cal McNair like shady or anything like that. But there ain't no backlash if D'Amico comes here. If you fire Lovie Smith and you hire D'Amico Ryans, that's a wrap. That's a wrap. Nobody's going to be upset by that.
Especially if the 49ers go on a run, man. They go on a run to the NFC. They get to the NFC Championship again, or they play for a Super Bowl. You hire the defensive coordinator off of a super successful NFC team.
I just think he's the best guy. But like you always hear,
leader of men, excitement, familiarity with the city.
How long does Lovie want to coach?
I don't know. He keeps coaching this product not very long, probably.
Like, could you see Lovie retiring after the year?
Yes.
Could you see him getting fired?
Yes. You have a case. You won 4 games last year. You're going to win 1 game this year. I don't care if
they brought in D'Amico. I mean, I think that would be a wrap. Like, that's really like the one move where you talk about like vibes, you talk about excitement, you talk about intrigue, all that. Like, that's really where it gets just insane.
You know he could bring a forward-thinking offensive mind too.
Yeah, because Kyle Shanahan, like, once you're in that connection, I mean, like, just go down the list. When's the last time like a Shanahan guy didn't work? Mike McDaniel, he's on the. I mean, Mike McDaniel, Kyle Shanahan, understudy. Robert Saleh, Kyle Shanahan, like Sean McVay, Shanahan. O'Connell indirectly, McVay, but like kind of Shanahan thing. Like when has that not worked?
It seems to work pretty well.
I can't even think of when it hasn't.
Let's see. I mean, the actual like assistants that have been hired as head coaches are just Saleh and McDaniel, but Saleh took somebody from the coaching staff. McDaniel was on the coaching staff. Like, I wonder who was on that 2016 Atlanta Falcons team. If there was somebody
that was Dan Quinn and then Shanahan. Yeah.
Sure. But I mean, I wonder if
McDaniel got fired, didn't he? Oh, they had a talk. That's where he went to rehab, right? He got fired in Houston for being a drunk. And then I think in Atlanta, that's where Dan Quinn and Shanahan had a talk with Mike McDaniel.
Just wondering if there was a whole bunch of offensive talent on that coaching staff.
Tons of pipelines. There's plenty to go around. Figure it out.
Yeah, Mike LaFleur was on that team as an offensive assistant, and Mike McDaniel was on that team as an offensive assistant as well. Mike LaFleur calls the Jets offense now, and obviously Mike McDaniel was the head coach of the Dolphins.
Where is the win going to come from for the Texans? Like, assuming that they're going to win another game, is Washington at home? Is that the next? Like, is that the most realistic shot at a dub? I'm looking at the schedule. You got Washington, then you got Miami, then you got Cleveland, Dallas, Kansas City, Tennessee, Jacksonville, Indianapolis.
I don't know what team's going to show up for Cleveland. I'd like for it to be Cleveland. I'd be foolish to tell you that it's going to be Cleveland because Nick Chubb's the running back there. Commanders next week feels like a pretty damn good opportunity.
Well, hopefully they don't take advantage of that opportunity. We need some more losses.
I mean, Jacksonville on New Year's Day.
Man, they've only won. That's crazy.
Jacksonville
it's weird. It's weird.
I thought they were going to be good. I like Doug Peterson a lot, but he's done a very bad job with them.
Yeah, not great.
They also wasted the first overall pick. Just an absolute buffoon pick.
They should have taken Hutchinson and not really overthought that.
Hutchinson is a freak. Today he made this play. It wasn't even a play where he actually he made the play to save a touchdown on the goal line, and Fields was able to run it in after that. But he made a play where he went to rush Fields and he saw he wasn't going to get to him, so he started chopping his feet and he took away the screen that Fields wanted to throw, and then Fields ended up throwing some crazy pass for a pick six. Hutchinson's a freak. That's a bad. Would Caserio have taken Hutchinson if they had the second pick?
Yes.
I think he would have run the card up there.
Yes.
And they would have presented him like the next JJ.
Zero doubt.
Wolverine Watt.
Yeah. Would have been done. All right, man. Anything else to add about this game?
When's the next time a running back's not going to go for a hundo on him?
This week.
You don't think Brian Robinson can go for 100? You
No.
don't think a guy that survived getting shot can go for 100 against this defense?
No. This week.
Yeah, Gibson and him might need to team up for 100.
Heineke might F around and get 100 though. Is Lovie going to say Heineke's athletic? He doesn't look athletic like he did Daniel Jones?
I was going to say, Daniel Jones did not run as much today as I thought he was going to be. Maybe Lovie was on to something.
Yeah, maybe Lovie figured it out. Maybe he's not athletic after all. Who knows?
That came off a lot like his 3 wide receiver comment that I remember.
What about his life lesson to DJ Bieneme on how the world works? Just a simple question about defense.
Context. Add more context.
I mean, he just basically said, "Oh, you asked me these pointed questions, and that's just not how the world works. There's a lot more to it, and blah blah blah, and it'll get there. We'll be better on defense." Yeah, it was just real. It was kind of condescending.
There have been some times where Lovie's been pretty upset with the line of questioning.
It's not like he gets grilled.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty chill. What are we at now? 1-7-1. So we got 8 more games, man. Fun times. Enjoying it.
Yeah. I mean, look, hey, I fondly remember the days of Lucas Harrell and Bud Norris and Rick Ankiel hitting a walk-off basically against the Rangers. I remember those days, and now the Astros are where they are.
Oh, come on.
We'll look back at Christian Kirksey like we look back at Bud Norris. We'll look back at these guys like we look back at Lucas Harrell and Matt Dominguez and Brett Wallace and all those crappy players that played for the Astros for all those years.
So is Lovie Bo Porter or is David Culley Bo Porter?
I think the combination of both of them is Bo Porter.
Okay.
And then they're going to find a hinge.
They're going to find a hinge. Is it going to be D'Amico?
Yeah, I like that. D'Amico or Dan? D'Amico or Dan Quinn?
Oh, okay, Dan. Yeah.
D'Amico or Dan? Those are our man. I'm trying to rhyme it. It's not working.
All right. See, I'm projected to beat you in fantasy now, by the way.
You were always projected to beat me, Landry.
Nope.
You were always projected to beat me.
All right, man. Later.
Adios.
See ya. It's Cody Stutes. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Again, we're in this together. No days off. This is what I do. This is what I do for a living. The team, no matter how much they suck, got to cover them. And today was a good day. This was a productive day. That's not spin or anything like that. It was a productive day. Every team that you needed to win won. The team you needed to lose, including the one that you support, they lost. And now it's just good times ahead. Astros world champs, Rockets tanking, whatever they're doing, and Texans stink. Maybe there's going to be a new coach. We know there's going to be some new franchise players. Maybe there's going to be a new coach. We'll talk about this tomorrow on In the Loop on Sports Radio 610, 10 a.m. I guess since this is, I got to say Central time, although I don't like time zones, but 10 a.m. Central. So 11 a.m. Eastern tomorrow on the Odyssey app. We'll get more into this. We'll have some fun. We got a lot of fun stuff on deck. No matter how bad it gets, no matter how much the Texans piss you off, as Faded Opinion just said, yes, we are married to the game and we are in this together. Have a good one.